Welcome to the Fashionista Life podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Johnson. If you find yourself here, it may mean that you're looking for clarity, courage, or confidence in some part of your life. I interview experts in business, fashion, and life each week and share strategies for success, motivation, and mindset. Let's get started. Today, we welcome into the studio Katie Desiderio. Did I say that right? Desiderio. We had this conversation and I messed it up. Desiderio and Michael Frino, and they're authors of this amazing book called The Beekeeper, Pollinating Your Organization for Transformative Growth. I'm holding this book up right now because this, guys, is a transformative book. It's amazing. It's a leadership fable. And it's been coined as an essential resource for founders, entrepreneurs, executives, and managers. And I want to say a huge congratulations to both of you because it hit the Wall Street Journal's bestseller.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yay! I wish I had the little button thing that I could do the clappers and be like, yay, guys, that's awesome. That's amazing. So I'm going to ask both of you your perspective. And Katie, I'm going to start with you first as to what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And when we think about inspiration, I think this is really a culmination of, over a decade of work. So Mike and I have been publishing in the academic journal space for, 12 years, always in the space of really, human performance at work. And so we started talking about, and this really came in my work in higher education, kind of going up for full professor and looking at writing a book, right? So this became a requirement outside of the academic journal publishing space. And so Mike and I started kicking around, what would a book look like? What would we want that to be? And it really was in my work, working with graduate students in our business school and then in my consulting space of storytelling. And so Mike and I started to really think about like, what do adult learners need? What resonates? What kind of captures what they need in terms of time and those takeaways for quick action steps. And so that kind of inspired us to start to go in this leadership fable direction. And the inspiration really for the book being about bees really was Mike's idea, right? He's like, what about writing about bees? Because bees
awesome.
Pollinate, and we always talk about helping things grow. And so we started to really explore bees and what they do, for the world and how they help things grow. And we kind of got on this kick of, moving toward the book.
Well, I think it's captivating because you're telling a story, and anytime you're telling a story, people listen. And then with that comes the message, and that resonates so much more. It's memorable.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. It was a very exciting journey to go on. I mean, Katie and I, we ended up, like she said, she was in consulting and I was working in Chicago. She was working in Chicago, and we hadn't seen each other. We're thousands of miles apart, and we decided to kind of say, hey, let's get together. We hadn't seen each other in a while. Start thinking about the book, and we grabbed pizza in Chicago. It was awesome, and like literally on the back of a pizza box, we started sketching out. We actually still have the image. We took a picture of it of like the exact kind of concept and what we're going to do. And that's kind of where the bee theme came up.
That's funny. Instead of a napkin, it's a pizza box. As we've all heard those stories. It all started in the basement of my home, or we were at a restaurant and I wrote it on a napkin. It was a pizza box.
It was a pizza box. So
I love it.
Yeah, that was the inspiration really. And you start having ideas and we talk about universe moments a lot, but we met on May 2nd, 2022.
And you had not known each other before this because, Katie, you're in the education space, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I'm in education, but I should say Mike and I met in grad school.
Right.
And so, we've been working together for the last 12 years. When Mike said we met on May 2nd, he meant to talk about the book, right? That was the Chicago moment. Yeah. So Mike, go ahead.
Chicago pizza moment.
Tell the story. Yeah, tell the
we went to grad
moment.
School. Yeah, we both got our doctorates in organizational learning and leadership. So we both have PhDs. We went to Barry University over there in Miami. And to Katie's point, we, as PhDs, you want to publish. So we started publishing academic journals. But Katie had aspirations to becoming a full professor. So we said, let's shift our energy
Mhm.
to write a book, to write a business book or a fable or a leadership book. And that's kind of when we got together on May 2nd to start thinking about it. But yeah, it was truly a very good whiteboard session. And then you always wonder, like, okay, is this going to manifest into
Mhm.
anything? But I think it was 18 days later, like we are on our news feed, it hit that it was UN World Bee Day, and it was like
Oh my
and
gosh.
it was like kind of this universe moment where it's like, oh wow, like this means something, right? And we
Mhm.
started researching about the bees and how, the UN is working to protect them because they are, a source of growth for everything. And I'm
Right.
like, all right, this, we got to go down the path.
Sometimes you have to listen to those whispers, right? There's this great quote by Oprah, and she said, "Life is always speaking to us, and we have to listen." And a lot of us don't listen.
Yeah, well said.
And look at where that's gotten you guys. That is so powerful.
Yeah, very much.
That's just take the time to step back and be still. Be still enough to listen, and then have the courage to move forward.
That's a great bee mindset. Be
It
still.
is a great
Mhm.
mindset. Well, and I'm actually thinking, there's an undertone of the book about this, about just
Mhm.
being able to be present because, and I don't want to give a spoiler alert, but the protagonist in the book really doesn't want to be on this vacation.
Right.
Right. And so it really takes her being present to stop, look, and listen. And then
Mhm.
all this learning and transformation happens in the spirit of that.
Well, I have to tell you, so I run a business book club. I don't run it, but I started it.
Okay.
And we meet every 6 weeks, and we have a different book that we read, and this is gonna be our next book.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
I
wonderful.
love
telling you,
that.
it speaks to life, it speaks to business, it speaks to many different areas, and you can take it any which way that you want, but it's
Well, that's
great.
great. We're glad to hear that. And you should know that Katie and I do have a bunch of resources for those. We just kind
Yep.
of put out on our website. So
Oh,
if you need
fabulous.
content for your book club.
Fabulous. So now I know that I've read the book front to back, and it's broken down into some really great lessons. And I have two favorites: the part where you talk about regrowth and rebirth and having tough skin. What is the most important lesson? And I don't want to give away the book because I want everybody to make sure that they get this. But if you were to, both of you, if you were able to pull one lesson out of that book, that wouldn't be a total spoiler. What would it be?
Sure, Katie, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, Mike. I guess for me, it's really a thread of two things. The first is, find a growth partner. Mike and I have found that in each other in, kind of our professional, and academic growth. This book has become an example of that. In the book, Catherine finds a growth partner, right? Someone who inspires her to see things different, to kind of move her out of her comfort zone. But in the spirit of that is this undertone of the bee mindset to be proximal. And so in the book, it really is like being at the core of learning and growth. And I think, and we open with this, in you saying, I found my purpose. I've been doing this work for years, right? And I kind of found this at the right time. And when we're able to be present with ourselves, kind of at the core of our own learning and growth, but then, our ability to be able to help other people do that, it's like magic happens. And so that's probably the thing that just kind of moves me the most about the book.
And I totally love that about the book too. So I'm glad that you highlighted that.
Yeah, I think for me, and you illuminated it a little bit when you kind of quoted Oprah, but I think people, like, they aren't curious enough to dive deeper and learn about others more deeply, right? And I think in the book, Catherine could have very easily not cared about being curious, and then her life would be completely different, right? But she demonstrated that kind of mindset of like, okay, let me be a little curious here and talk to this individual and see if I can learn and grow from them. And then that's kind of where, transformation happens if you care to go deep enough with somebody.
Right.
And
It's in the details.
it's in the
right?
details, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because how many of us just, it's like, and I'm going to reference, you can go into a store and you can walk past racks every single day, right? And then they change the store around, and then you're like, hey, I've never seen that before. And they'll be, well, that's been here for months, right? If you just look at it from a different angle, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
It can
We
It's a
change
good
talk
it.
analogy.
about Yeah, and these are really, Mike and I use this a lot. There's reference to this in the book about lens check, right? Our lens
Mhm.
check moments, right? What we see depends mainly on what lens we choose. And to your point, it's easy to get lost in like ourselves or just in the routine. But how do we, right? Kind of take a step back and be able to see the people and the things around us, and then how we can interact with that, right? And sometimes we need those reminders to do that.
Absolutely. In that there's a lot of growth, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Is your closet overflowing? Or maybe your kids' closets are as well. Or maybe you just want to redecorate your house. If you're wondering what to do with all that stuff that you've accumulated, bring it all to True Fashionistas or even ship it to them for free, and they'll sell your unwanted items for you. They take away all the hassle by doing all the work, and all you have to do is sit back and collect your money. You can reach out to them online at truefashionistas.com, come into the store, or check them out on Facebook or Instagram, and that is truefashionistas.com. Welcome back, my friends. We are in studio with Katie and Michael, and they are the authors of The Beekeeper, Pollinating Your Organization for Transformative Growth. And I've got to tell you again, going to be part of my book club. I think a lot of book clubs are going to use this. It's just such great information in here. I want to walk through the journey of writing your book from the idea to the printing of it. Like, what did that journey look like for both of you?
Yes, I think we talked a little bit about kind of the process of ideation,
Mhm.
and that was a big part of it. Um, to find a publisher, it's not easy to do. So we took a very kind of careful approach to saying, okay, like how do we map out a story to pitch a publisher, and
Mhm.
that's what we did. We talked about um, the the female protagonist. We talked about the importance of bees. We talked about businesses and growing companies and kind of the struggles that women entrepreneurs have maybe,
Mhm.
and those kind of themes kind of resonate with certain publishers, and so Wiley is a big publisher in the academic space. We've published a ton of journals with them, and we definitely leveraged kind of our existing
Mhm.
research to kind of make the pitch. And once you get the pitch, then you kind of wait and see if
Right.
they'll bite on your book, and once they do, then they kind of map out and help you map out the writing
Mhm.
journey. But I'll defer to Katie and see if you have anything to add.
Yeah, Mike, you're right. Like we did this vetting, I think at the core of just who we are, we're researchers, right? And so we looked
Mhm.
into publishers and what would resonate. But, I just want to add to what Mike said. We're still learning about the book publishing process, right? You opened with
Right.
like we hit Wall Street Journal bestseller, and we're like, okay, we put our heart and soul into all of this to get to launch. We hit Wall Street Journal bestseller, and now what? And we're
Right.
learning now what?
Mhm.
But I think that this is also like for listeners, we're subject matter experts in an area, but it also kind of opens us to beginner's mind in book publishing because there's so much we don't know,
Mhm.
and there's so much vulnerability with us leaning in to say, I don't know, teach us, right? What
Mhm.
could we learn? Who could we connect with? Who's modeling, the things that we want to see ourselves do? And we're in that space now of like, well, let's learn, let's connect with people. Like even being here with
Right.
you inspires us to think about right, book club talks, like what
Mhm.
are resources people need? What are the
Right.
things that we're not thinking about? That goes back to your point of those lens check moments that like we could get lost in like tunnel vision of here's our vision,
Mhm.
but like how are we looking around to say like, well, what could we learn? What are we not thinking? What could we see? What could we develop? And I think we're right there in the heart of that, of still navigating this learning process.
Well, and I think what you said about you can get so caught up in where you're at that it's hard to sometimes step out and see. And I
Yeah.
had that problem as a female entrepreneur trying, like we had a
Mhm.
conversation before we started. I didn't know what that was. I had an idea, but I didn't know. And it took a lot of learning. And
Yeah.
when you open yourself up and you're able to learn, you're willing to learn,
Right.
that changes everything because there's nothing that's not on the table at that point.
You're so right. And Mike and I have felt this sense of responsibility in the space of even putting this work out or doing podcasts like this, that what we're espousing to be important is also what we're enacting in our behaviors. And so the things that we're saying are actually the things that we're doing. And so at the heart of that is like growth mindset. Just every day, what are we learning? How are we doing better? What are we not seeing? Right? How are we leaning in to, maybe do it better, redirect? And that's been a space that's been a little bit freeing, but also something, right, that leaves us a little bit vulnerable to say like, well, we don't know. We have to figure this out.
Right. But there's a lot to be said about vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you
Yeah.
guys think about that? Like if you're open and you're vulnerable, you're approachable, and there's so much that goes around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people that's really not. It's hard to do, right?
It is.
Demonstrate vulnerability. And I think we do a lot of consulting work. And we have consultants come in at my company, but we do a lot of reflection on like what is our personality style, like how open are we to being vulnerable, and we spend a lot of time there because a lot of people have to think differently, right, and self-reflect on who they are as an individual and what it's going to take for them to stretch and demonstrate vulnerability, because people want that environment where their leaders, their managers, the people they're working with are vulnerable, because it kind of opens the door for others to be more vulnerable with with their manager or leader. And so when you create that environment, I think that lends to high performance and people feel more comfortable. So yeah, it's a common theme throughout the book too. So really important concept. Yeah, Katie, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, Mike, so well said, just about, like our deep level diversity attributes of like who we are and how we show up. To Mike's point, the B mindsets in the book is like you get to choose who and how you want to be. Like we get to author that, right? That's part of our leadership story. And to Mike's point, when we think about vulnerability, something that we often forget from a leadership perspective is that leadership starts with you. And so when we look at the tri-level of leadership, it's individual, that's you, that's the person. Then it's you working with others at the group level. And then it's the impact at the organizational level. But we always have to roll back to, how do you show up? What are you learning? What are you modeling? What are the things that you want to see more of at the group level? But it starts here. And so in that space of vulnerability, it's, to Mike's point, it might not be easy. We might have to expend some energy to stretch, to be vulnerable. But when we're able to have those lens check moments to show up and say, wow, I need to unlearn, right? Which is really hard for adults. I need to unlearn the way that I've always done it. And I need to look at this a different way. That's how we get stronger, right? That's how we encourage people around us to be able to model the same behaviors. And that's really where we see magic happen, right?
Absolutely. We're holding that proverbial pen, right? As individuals, we're holding that pen to write our story.
Yep.
And we have to show up authentically, right? For our team. Because, if you're not, you can see through that. And I just go back to authenticity and vulnerability.
No question. I think that a lot of the work that's done on self-reflecting, understanding your personality and your behavioral attributes, people don't take the time to do that. And so sometimes they have blind spots and they don't even realize that they're showing up this way. I mean, I'm guilty of that, right?
We all are
you
to
do
some
these
extent,
assessments.
right?
Yeah. It's like, hey, people may think you don't like them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's hurtful. Like, why? And then so you have to be curious enough to explore why that is, and then, make small changes. To Katie's point earlier about demonstrating growth mindset and saying, like, I have to grow in this area because, if people think I'm unapproachable but that's my style, is to ask a lot of questions and think. And so that could come across to people who are high energy or enthusiastic as like, oh, this, they don't trust me, or so just mindfulness.
It's kind of it's like hard conversations and wanting to get to the truth and then facing it and going, oh, really? That's I didn't know
Exactly.
I was like that.
Yeah. And no, that, I mean, if that's your personality, no one's saying that you have to change completely. It's just the self-awareness that you do.
That's what it is. Exactly.
And then making adjustments to be better.
Absolutely. All right. Any more books in the works for the two of you? I can feel it. I can feel it.
Katie, you want to take that?
Yeah. So
he's deferring to you, Katie.
Yeah, I know. We are. We're already talking about the next book. And I think that inspiration for the second book, and this is typical of Mike and I, right? Like I said, we've been writing together for over a decade. And it's always like, well, what's next? How are we threading? How are we building, right? How are we continuing to just think about optimizing, right, human performance at work? But that's also us doing it. So we're kind of working on some extension of this book to go into these kind of leadership lessons into another fable.
I would love a workbook.
Oh,
I'm telling you, I would love a workbook around this.
it's a good idea.
But I'm that I mean, there are other people out there like me that we like to write things down, and we like to have a component of the book. Otherwise, we're writing over the book. And then we're like, I don't know what that was. But it would just be a great addition to the book.
All right. Yeah. Just note taken.
My 2 cents.
I love that. And Mike mentioned earlier on our website, we have growth guides available that are kind of more miniature workbooks, but things that we could do as individuals, or if we're working in a book club or with our team, things like that. But I love this idea of, thinking about something that you could kind of take notes in and personalize.
Absolutely. Well, I have so much enjoyed having you guys on today. Now, if our listeners want to get a hold of the book, or they want to get a hold of you guys, where can they do that? Because you've mentioned some resources which would be invaluable to have, with this book. Like you said, if someone's doing this in a book club or they just want to do it for themselves, where can they go?
Yeah, so we have a website, leadershipfables.com, and that could connect you with Katie and I, as well as all the resource guides. We are encouraging people to become members to get access to all of that, growth guides and stuff they can use to kind of support the book, as well as a ton of different things we're doing and packages that we have that people can bring this to their teams and organizations. So there's a lot on there that people can explore, but that's the best way to get a hold of us.
That is fabulous. Thank you guys so much for being on today.
Thanks for having us.
I know that our listeners are probably going to be flocking to buy this book, or buzzing, flying. Yeah. I find the right words.
Well, we want a lot of pollinators out there.
There we go. So thank you guys so much for being on again. And thank you for joining me today and every week here on The Fashionista Life. If you want a deeper dive, head to my website, thefashionistalife.com, to sign up for my weekly newsletters where we take a deeper dive each week into a new topic. Have a fabulous day.